My name is Eliza. I was 29 years old. I lived in a small flat with my husband. His name was Thomas. We had been married for 4 years. I worked at a dental clinic as a receptionist. Thomas worked as a private driver. He drove people to meetings, parties, and business events. We lived in a quiet town. Our street was calm. We did not have many friends. We liked our quiet life, or so I believed. Each morning I woke up early. I made tea, toast, and eggs. I got dressed and took the bus to work. I came home by 6 in the evening. I was always tired, but I felt happy when I saw Thomas. He used to smile at me when I came home. He used to kiss my cheek and ask about my day. I made dinner and we ate together. We watched TV after dinner. It was a normal life. After some time, things started to change. At first, it was small. Thomas stopped eating dinner with me. He said he had already eaten. He said he was not hungry. He started coming home later than before. I asked if everything was okay. He said his work was busy. He said he had more night trips. I believed him. I did not want to worry. On weekends, we used to walk in the park. We used to sit by the lake. We used to laugh and talk for hours. But that stopped. He started staying in bed all day. He said he was tired. Sometimes he went out without me. He said he was meeting a friend. He never told me who. He never said where. I stayed home alone. I cleaned the flat and made food. I waited for him to come back. One day I washed his clothes. I checked his pockets. In one jacket, I found a hotel receipt. My hands froze. My heart started to beat fast. The hotel was not near our home. The time was late at night. I felt cold. I stared at the paper for a long time. I wanted to believe it was work. I wanted to trust him. I put the paper in my drawer and said nothing. After that, I started watching him more. He took his phone everywhere, even to the bathroom. He never left it alone. He changed his phone password. I did not ask why. I just watched. He started wearing new shirts. He put on cologne every day, even when he said he was only going to the shop. He looked in the mirror more. He smiled at himself. He brushed his hair with care. At night, he turned his back to me. He looked at his phone for hours. He smiled at the screen. I lay next to him, awake. I stared at the wall. I tried not to cry. I asked myself many questions. Was I imagining things? Was I too sensitive? But the truth stayed in my heart. One evening he came home very late. I waited and waited. I called him many times. He did not answer. I looked at the clock. It was midnight. Then it was 1. Then 2. I sat by the window. I watched the road. I felt something heavy in my chest. I did not cry. I felt frozen. He came home after sunrise. He said his car broke down. He said he slept at a friend's house. I smiled. I said nothing. But inside, something broke. I no longer believed his words. I felt like a stranger in my own home. That week I found a bracelet in his bag. It was not mine. I did not know whose it was. It was small and shiny. It smelled like perfume, a sweet smell I never wore. I put it back where I found it. I sat on the bed in silence. I did not know what to do. My days became gray. I went to work like a robot. I answered phones. I smiled at people. But my heart was not there. My manager asked if I was okay. I said I was tired. I was more than tired. I was sad, scared, and lost. At home, I cleaned and cooked. I watched Thomas walk in and out. He gave short answers. He laughed at his phone. He left his plate half full. He said he had no time. He said he was late. He said he had to go. Always go. One Sunday morning I sat in the kitchen. I held a cup of tea. The tea got cold. I did not drink it. The window was open. I heard birds. I saw kids playing. I saw families walking together. I felt alone, though I was married. I felt like I was living with a ghost. That night, he dressed up again. A clean shirt, polished shoes, the same cologne. He said he had a quick trip. I asked no questions. I only nodded. He smiled and left. I looked out the window. I watched his car disappear. I sat on the sofa for a long time. I did not turn on the TV. I did not eat. I just sat in silence. My heart beat slowly. My eyes were dry. I was tired of crying. I was tired of hoping. I was tired of lies. I went to the drawer and took out the hotel receipt. I looked at it again. I placed the bracelet next to it. I looked at both. My hands were cold. My body felt weak. But my mind was clear. I knew something now. I could not lie to myself. That evening I wrote in my journal. I wrote down every small thing. The hotel paper, the late nights, the perfume, the bracelet, the cold looks, the secret smiles. I wrote it all. When I finished, I closed the book. I sat still. The next morning I woke up early. I did not make tea. I did not prepare breakfast. I stood by the window. The sun was soft. The road was quiet. I felt ready. I was not afraid anymore. I had no proof of his words, but I had proof in my heart. Thomas came out of the room. He looked at me. I looked back. He said nothing. I said nothing. The silence between us was loud. It told me more than words. That day I made a decision. I needed to know the full truth. I could not stay in the dark. I would not pretend anymore. I was ready to find out who my husband really was. I was ready, even if the truth hurt me. Before I share the rest of my story, I need to know, where are you listening from? Knowing someone hears me, understands me, gives me strength. The next morning I felt calm. I made no breakfast. I sat on the bed and thought. The house was quiet. Thomas had already left. I listened to the clock on the wall. The ticking sound filled the room. I sat still for a long time. I looked at the bracelet again. I opened my drawer and saw the receipt. My hands felt cold, but my heart felt ready. I needed answers now. I needed to know what was real. I had waited too long. I had cried enough. That day I stayed home. I called work and said I was sick. I looked at the calendar. I looked at the clock. I made a plan in my mind. I would not follow him. I would not ask him. I would find the truth on my own. I remembered the name of the hotel. It was written clearly on the paper. I searched for it online. I saw the address. I saw pictures of the building. I looked at the name again and again. It was not near our area. I left the house quietly. I took the bus to the other side of the town. I walked slowly. I looked at each street. The hotel was tall. It had glass windows and a shiny door. My feet stopped in front of it. I stood there for a few minutes. People came and went. Some laughed. Some held hands. I watched the door open and close. I felt my heart beat fast, but I did not move. I stood still like a statue. I went inside. The air smelled like flowers and perfume. The floor was shiny. The lights were soft. There was music playing in the background. I looked at the front desk. A young woman stood behind it. She smiled at the guests. I looked away. I walked past the lobby. I saw a sitting area with chairs and a coffee table. I sat down. I looked at my phone. I pretended to scroll. But I watched the people. I watched the elevator. I waited. After some time, a woman came down. She wore a red dress and high heels. She smiled at someone on her phone. She looked happy. Then a man followed behind her. He looked around before stepping out. My heart stopped for a second. It was Thomas, my husband. I looked down quickly. I turned my face. I held my phone with both hands. My fingers felt stiff. I could not breathe for a moment. He walked with the woman. They laughed. They walked outside together. I stayed in my seat. I did not move. My body felt frozen. My eyes burned, but I did not cry. I sat in silence for a long time. I left the hotel after some time. I walked down the street. I did not feel the wind. I did not hear the cars. I just walked. My steps were slow. My head was heavy. My legs felt weak, but I kept moving. I reached home before him. I sat at the kitchen table. I did not eat. I did not drink. I just sat and waited. I looked at the walls. I looked at my hands. I felt nothing. I felt empty inside. He came home later that night. He said nothing. He walked into the room. He changed his clothes. He acted like everything was normal, but nothing was normal for me anymore. Nothing felt the same. The next few days I stayed quiet. I acted like before. I made tea. I made dinner. I cleaned the house. But inside, I was broken. I knew what I saw. I could not forget it. I kept thinking about the woman, her red dress, her smile, the way she walked beside him, the way he looked at her, the way he smiled. It was the same smile he once gave to me. I looked at the photos from our wedding. I looked at his face in those pictures. He looked so happy. He looked proud. I remembered how he held my hand, how he promised a good life. But now he gave that smile to someone else. Each day I felt smaller. I felt like a shadow. I was there, but not seen. I was alive, but not living. I cooked food, but I could not eat. I cleaned, but I could not rest. I tried to sleep, but I could not close my eyes. He still left the house every evening. He said it was work. He said the roads were busy. He said clients needed night trips. I said nothing. I just listened. I no longer believed anything. I stopped caring about the house. I stopped folding clothes. I stopped watering the plant by the window. The leaves turned brown. The flowers dropped. It looked just like me, tired and forgotten. One day, I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes had dark circles. My face looked pale. My hair was messy. I did not look like the Eliza I once was. I felt like I had lost myself. I did not recognize the woman in the glass. I sat on the bed and opened my journal. I read my old words. I saw the love I had for him. I saw the dreams I once had. I wanted a family. I wanted a future. But now, I had only silence and secrets. I thought about the truth. I had seen it with my own eyes. I had the paper. I had the bracelet. I had the memory of him and the woman at the hotel. That was enough. I needed no more proof. The truth was clear. I stood up and opened my closet. I looked at my clothes. I touched my suitcase. My hands were steady. My heart was still. I felt no fear. I felt only peace. I knew what I had to do next. I sat at the table and wrote a short note. I kept my words simple. I did not ask questions. I did not blame. I only said what was true. I folded the paper and placed it on the bed. I packed my clothes in silence. I folded my old sweater. I placed my shoes in the bag. I looked around the room one last time. I took a deep breath. I walked out of the flat. Outside, the sky was dark, but I felt light. The wind touched my face. I looked up at the stars. For the first time in many weeks, I smiled. I did not know where I would go, but I knew I could not stay. I walked down the road, my bag in my hand, my heart still full of pain, but also full of strength. I left behind the lies. I left behind the nights full of silence. I walked into a new day. I walked into a new life. I walked through the dark streets with my bag. My steps were slow. My body was tired. The wind was cold, but I kept going. I did not cry. I only looked at the road. I just wanted to keep walking. I wanted to go far away from everything. I reached the bus stop near the market. I sat on the bench. I placed my bag on the ground. The night was quiet. I looked up at the sky. There were no stars, only clouds and darkness. I looked at my hands. They were shaking a little. I felt cold, but it was not just the wind. Then it happened. My chest hurt. My eyes filled with tears. I tried to stop, but I could not. I put my hands over my face. I cried quietly. I cried for all the days I stayed silent. I cried for the nights I waited. I cried for the love that felt lost. I cried because I still loved him. I wiped my face with my scarf. I looked at the road again. I felt something deep inside. I thought about our wedding day. I thought about our first apartment. I remembered his laugh, his eyes, his warm hands. I remembered the man I married. He was still my husband. My heart felt heavy, but also full. I had walked away. I had been strong, but now I wanted to go back. I wanted to try one more time. I did not want to leave with anger. I wanted to know I had done everything I could. I stood up from the bench. I picked up my bag. I turned around. I started walking home. My steps were slow, but they were sure. The sky was still dark, but something inside me felt different. When I reached the door, I stood still. My hand touched the key. I waited for a few seconds. Then I opened the door slowly. The room was dark. I placed my bag near the wall. I looked around. Everything was the same, but I felt like a different person. I did not wake him. I sat on the edge of the bed. I looked at his face in the soft light. He was asleep. He looked tired. He looked older than before. My heart ached, but I also felt calm. The next morning, I made tea. I placed a cup on the table for him. He sat down without a word. I looked at him and said nothing, but inside, I was speaking. I wanted to tell him I was hurt. I wanted to ask why, but I also wanted to say I was still here. In the days that followed, I stayed. I cooked simple food. I cleaned the house. I did not speak much. I watched him carefully. He did not smile like before. He did not leave the house at night. He sat in the living room and watched old films. He looked at me sometimes. I looked back. There were no words between us. But there was something. Maybe it was pain. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was hope. I didn't know, but I felt it. I did not ask where he had been. I did not talk about the woman or the hotel. I kept those thoughts in my journal. I wrote in silence each night. I wrote down my feelings. I wrote my dreams. I wrote my fears. I told myself I would try. I would not forgive quickly, but I would try to understand. I would try to remind him of what we had. I would try to bring back the good things. Some days were hard. I felt weak. I felt sad. I wanted to run again, but I stayed. I walked with him to the shop one day. We bought bread and milk. He carried the bag. I walked beside him. We did not talk much, but we were side by side again. One morning, he made me tea. He placed it on the table. Then he walked away. I looked at the cup. I held it in my hands. I felt the warmth. It was a small thing, but it meant something. Maybe he was trying too. I cleaned the bedroom. I opened the windows. I changed the sheets. I washed our clothes. I moved through the house slowly. I moved with care. I touched each object like it was part of our past. At night, I sat beside him on the sofa. We watched a film together. I did not cry. I did not ask questions. I only sat near him. He looked at me once. Our eyes met for a second. Then we both looked away. The silence between us was still there, but it was not cold now. It was quiet, but not empty. It held something soft, something that might grow. I did not know what the future would bring. I did not know if he would change. I did not know if I would heal. But I knew one thing. I had chosen to try. Trying did not mean forgetting. Trying did not mean accepting lies. It meant standing up every day. It meant showing love even when it hurt. It meant hoping for change, but not waiting forever. I looked at the photo on our shelf. It was from our first year of marriage. We were both smiling. We looked young and full of dreams. I touched the frame and closed my eyes. I whispered to myself, I am still here. I folded the laundry and placed it in the drawer. I made rice and vegetables for lunch. I swept the floor. I did not feel strong every moment, but I did not feel broken either. The days passed slowly. Some felt warm. Some felt heavy. But each day, I kept trying. I watched Thomas with quiet eyes. I looked for signs of change. I waited for small moments of care. I did not know if he would become the man he once was. I did not know if I would trust him again, but I gave space for a new story. A story that was still being written. The nights were still quiet, but now they were not filled with tears. I watched the moon through the window. I held my cup of tea. I sat on the sofa and breathed deeply. I was not the same woman who stood at the bus stop. I was not the same woman who ran away. I was a woman who came back. I came back because I believed love should be given every chance. I did not know the ending yet. Maybe it would be good. Maybe it would hurt again. But for now, I was here. I was trying. And sometimes trying was enough.